Have you ever wondered what thought is? And does thought provide us with a good view of reality as it actually is? Or is the world we see changed by how we think about it? Well, today we find out. I have so many questions. I'm afraid. Should I follow religion or should I go from my history to accepted truth? Welcome back, everyone, to An Ordinary Search for Truth and to part 2 of my new video series, What is Reality? Awareness and Its Activity. My name is Nate, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at the activity of thought within awareness and how it functions fundamentally and just how intertwined it actually is with our experience of reality. I introduced thought in part 1 of the series as the third state of awareness, or awareness in its active processing state. If you haven't watched that yet, click on the banner above because this video is going to be building upon the foundation that my first video laid out. To review just briefly, thought within awareness is an activity within the activity of manifestation. It is a complex, self-limiting function that allows awareness to experience itself from what appears to be a separate point of view. As I've stated before, I'm going to try my best to help you directly experience what thought actually is, as opposed to what you currently think that it is, and just how deeply connected thought is with how you perceive every aspect of reality, which of course includes how you perceive yourself. In fact, thought is so subtle and complex, and we are so involved and identified with it that I've had to dedicate my next 7 videos to the task of breaking down its process of polarization, which we'll of course discuss more about in a bit. Most of us don't fully understand just how deeply rooted thought is in our experience. Think about, for a moment, how you would define thought. What do you consider thought to be in your experience? A function that happens within your personal mind or your brain? Something that you do, that you have some measure of control over? Do you see thought as a tool that you use to solve problems, weigh options, learn and share information, formulate ideas, etc.? Do you have conscious thoughts and unconscious thoughts? Where do thoughts come from? Where do they go? What are they made out of? These are all very good questions and a little bit difficult to pin down because we're using thought to think about itself. It's kind of a strange thing. You're in the process of thinking right now, so let's try to look at what is happening directly, experientially. Try to take a look at thought as it's happening right now in the present moment. If I tell you to think about an elephant, let's say, what happens in your experience? Just take a moment to notice. Maybe an image or picture of an elephant comes up, a mental movie of sorts. Does a voice in your head start to say some things about elephants, what you think about them? Did a memory of a previous experience that you've had with an elephant come up? Again, just notice these things as they happen. I tried to help you notice in part 1 that without awareness, these thoughts would have no reality. Without you as awareness itself to know these thoughts, they would not exist. Your awareness is the substance of their reality. It's really easy to engage in the process of thought as we just did. But if I asked you to stop thinking for, let's say, 30 seconds, would you be able to do it? Try this right now. Just stop thinking for a bit. Not quite as easy, right? That voice in your head sure has a lot to say about pretty much everything. Images and memories pop up almost unannounced a lot of the time. The train of thought chugs from station to station, from thought to thought, and it's easy to get lost in it. And the thought that's happening that we've just been observing is really a more surface level activity of thought. There are much deeper layers which include our entire worldview of beliefs, opinions, and knowledge. I'll bring up once again meditation. Meditation is a process not necessarily aimed at quieting or stopping thoughts. This just won't work, and you'll get extremely frustrated if you try to do this. Meditation is simply the practice of redirecting your awareness or your focus away from thoughts, from sensations and phenomena, and point it back on itself, merely being aware of being aware. While you're doing this, the activity of thought will go on, just like the activity of manifestation and sensations will go on. But when you take the energy of your attention away, the activity fades into the background of your experience. The activity of awareness is happening within awareness, but the less that you focus on it, the less substantial it becomes, and the more you become aware of the source of its substance or awareness itself. Again, I highly recommend that you practice meditation to get in touch experientially with what I'm talking about, because it will make a ton more sense. Look at it this way. If you had no experience whatsoever with the elephant we thought about earlier, then nothing I say would be as effective in communicating what an elephant is than if you had a direct experience with an elephant. Really getting hands on in the experience. That will teach you far more than my words ever could. Thought, as I've presented it, is a processing, polarizing function within awareness. And I want to help you notice what that actually means in your experience. This may be a bit difficult if you've never had the realization of oneness of reality, but let's try to notice a few things. Take, for example, a bar magnet or any magnet that you used to play with as a kid. A magnet is a pairing of two oppositely charged energy fields, typically called the north and south poles or the positive and negative fields. We might imagine that each side could be self existing, but if we actually cut a magnet in half, we don't now have a positively charged half and a negatively charged half. What actually happens is each magnet becomes their own new magnet, each one taking on a new negative charge or a new positive charge to balance back out. One cannot exist without the other. They are in a relationship with one another and depend upon one another for their existence. They always arise together. Now, thought polarizes manifestation in a similar way and often imagines separation where there is actually only distinction. Each time that thought draws an imaginary line inside of infinite reality, on each side of the line, new polarizations arise, which then can have a line drawn between them and so on for eternity. Let's look at a few more ways that thought does this. For example, you could not experience feeling something rough if your hand in relation to it was not soft. Roughness and softness are subjective concepts and must appear together for either to be experienced. Now imagine you felt two different rough things. Maybe one is more rough than the other, which means that the other would be soft in comparison. And furthermore, there could be no experience of roughness or softness if there was not someone to experience them. You, as the experiencer, and the world, as the experienced, rely upon one another to exist. Are you starting to see how this subdivision happens and continues on? You could not have the experience of being happy if you'd never experienced not being happy. Happiness and sadness are two sides of the same magnet. They must always appear together in a relationship. You could not have the experience of being you if you did not have the experience of something that is not you by which you could reference yourself. Again, they rise together in a relationship. One side cannot exist without the other. It's this principle of yin-yang, of universal duality. Only thought imagines them to be separate or self-existing. There are an infinite number of examples like this where thought has imagined separation, where it's drawn imaginary lines. One last example, though, is how we've used thought to divide up the electromagnetic spectrum. We've drawn lines which separate gamma rays. We've named them gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, and so on and so forth. There really isn't any separation within the electromagnetic spectrum. It's just energy vibrating at different frequencies, and it goes on to infinity in both directions. We've only made up the lines where these type of rays turn into these type of rays turn into these. They're all one. There's really no separation, only distinction in frequency. Reality itself is like this infinite electromagnetic spectrum, or like an infinite magnet that goes on in both directions. Thought imagines that reality can be broken up into self-existing, independent pieces, when in reality, it's always just one. We only imagine any separation. This is duality, and it's thought that generates duality in our experience. Without thought, reality would appear to us as it is, non-dual, no separation, only distinction. Because thought is a process of polarization within awareness, it cannot truly comprehend the inherent oneness of all things. That would be outside of its ability to function. It's like trying to imagine an infinite line. Go ahead and try to imagine it. We can't do it. The mind needs a beginning and an end. It needs dimensions and space and definitions, limits. Any idea you have of separation of any kind is the activity of thought at work. That is what it does and what it's limited to. It's more than just images that pop up or that voice in your head. It is also those deep assumptions that we've made about reality. Just ponder this for a moment. Any idea of separation of any kind is the process of thought, imagining it to be so. Can you see by this statement how deeply rooted thought is in your experience and the way that you view the world? Are you starting to see just how many times thought has imagined separation, duality, and polarization within reality, and how real this illusion has become for you? It's an incredibly powerful process. Thought not only generates all of your ideas, your opinions, your fears, and your desires, but also the belief that you are an individual self within an outside world that you are separate from. You believe that you are in a tiny body on a massive world inside of an infinite universe, and that you're somehow separate from it all. You haven't realized yet that these are just beliefs. This is just what thought is imagining within awareness. It's not an accurate view of true reality. It is a filtered, processed view. Your thoughts are probably bringing up similar objections to what mine did when trying to understand this, because we're trying to understand it with thought. Thoughts might say, well, obviously there's separation. Look, here's my hand, and here's the table. I'm touching it, and now I'm not. Now there's separation. Yes, that's how it appears in the activity of thought. It's not a simple process, it's very complex. That is how reality appears when thought is processing it. It's a powerful illusion. But if you really look at reality from the place of awareness, from that place that knows, that is aware of these objections and the content of thought, you will discover that all is awareness, and there's no actual separation within awareness, only distinction. The awareness that knows and is the substance of its own activity, which appears as your hand, which appears as the table, which appears as the space between them, is all fundamentally awareness. Without awareness, the hand wouldn't be, it wouldn't exist. Without awareness, the table and the space would not exist. Even the activity of thought that believes there are separate objects wouldn't exist. Nothing would exist. All that is awareness and its activity. When the activity of thought happens, the world as it appears to you as a limited point of view happens as well. This is very deep understanding. This is some of the highest truth. And it took me years to start to see how thought is generating the illusion of separation and just how powerful this illusion is. So don't worry if it's not apparent for you right now. Don't worry if you have objections and it's hard to comprehend. It will come in time. All I can really do is continue directing your awareness back on itself, because through realizing the truth of awareness, you will eventually become aware of the truth about the activity of thought happening within it and how thought creates duality. One last question that I'd like to quickly discuss is one that only recently did I answer for myself. In spiritual circles, thought is often seen as an enemy to realization or enlightenment. Thought is equated kind of with the ego. And of course, everyone knows that we must rid ourselves of the ego in order to become enlightened. Even though there's no ego to get rid of and no one to get rid of it. Thought is not inherently bad or negative or something that we need to or even can get rid of. Again, thought is something that awareness is doing, and awareness will continue doing it in the same way that awareness will continue doing manifestation. Even after enlightenment or awakening or whatever you want to call it, the thought will continue chugging along, doing its thing. The only thing that will change is that your identity will have shifted to being awareness itself, and thus be in an aware place of seeing or witnessing thought as it flows through you, in the same way that sensations flow through you. And once you make this shift, you won't continue to be sucked into the content of thought and taken for a ride through illusion. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not something to get rid of. It's an active part of God or of awareness. It's essential for awareness to experience itself from a limited point of view. However, you can rise above the suffering that you experience when you identify with the activity of thought, rather than awareness itself, or when you believe that the duality and the separation that thought generates is an accurate representation of reality instead of a processed one. That suffering we can be free of, and I hope to help you do that. In my next video, part 3, we're going to be taking a look at the first line of separation that thought imagines within reality. This is where our experience of duality begins in life, and it happens before we can even remember it happening. So definitely stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching part 2. If you liked what you saw, hit like down below, and make sure you subscribe to be notified for each additional part of this series as it's released. I'm sure you still have a lot of questions about thought as an activity of awareness, So definitely comment your questions down below and I'll do my best to give you a little bit more clarity. My future videos, of course, will help with that as well. I do love hearing from you and responding to you, so thank you so much for that support. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Don't worry, I've got a lot more content for you to enjoy. Click the link to the right to see a video that goes hand in hand with what you just watched. On the left is a playlist I recommend you check out. And down below, you can see my latest video release. Your support means the world to me, so thank you.